Alright, so today we're going to be talking over a new set of keywords. These ones are going to be more aimed towards utility usage again, and more specifically flashbangs. So there's 4 types of flashbangs, which can really be keyword, or have keywords attached to them, and we'll run through them one at a time. So the reason why we would probably want to do something like this is fairly simple. So it can obviously be quite confusing if you want a very specific type of flashbang and you don't have some form of specific wording for it. So therefore, there's 4 types of flashbangs in my book. There are obviously more types, such as underarm flashbangs, but you can just simply call it underarm and it's fairly self-explanatory to the team. But otherwise, these ones are more specific, things that you can organize with your teammates, etc. Before the game, and everyone will understand exactly what they mean. But obviously, one word of warning before we start. These names, these are what I call them. Feel free to rename them whatever the hell you want. Personally, I think these work well for me, and they've worked well for teams that I've been in, so I just stick to these names. So we'll start with the first one. I call this a Bonda flash. So what a Bonda flash in my eyes is, it's a flash thrown intentionally aggressive, so the opponents are forced to go into anti-flash, or generally turn away from the flash. So what this might look like, for example, is, let's say it could be opponent on top of short. Let's say playing an angle like this. And what you might want is, instead of doing a pop flash, they might already be anti-flash. So if you were to do a pop flash, then they might turn after your flash and then try and fight. Now what you're looking for is potentially sometimes what I call this Bonda flash, and what this is an intentionally bad thrown flash, so that they are forced to turn away from it, so that when you take the fight, they're hopefully just turning back into you as you turn a corner. So you might do something, they're usually thrown self, but you can also have teammates throw them for you, and this would be where I might just throw a hyper aggressive off the wall, so they bounces a couple of times, they're definitely going to see it. So for example, if I was in this position, then I would see it, I would turn away, and then I would turn back. And that way you could then use that to your advantage as a player, so you could come out with it straight after and potentially take those fights. So that's what I call a Bonda flash. You can call it as you want, but that's, for me, I can tell my teammates, okay, Bonda flash means intentionally aggressive flash, and now everyone understands exactly what that means. So we're going to the next one. So I already mentioned this just a second ago, but we're talking about a pop flash. So a pop flash is a flash generally that has no bounce, and it's usually used as an element of surprise. So we can use another example of what this looks like. Everyone usually knows what this means, but again, if for some reason people just don't get the concept of a pop flash, really easy to explain. If you think there might be an AWP on this angle, or maybe even a rifle, then you obviously need some form of flashbang in order to catch them off. Now if it was to bounce, they're going to hear it, they're going to turn away, so you might want to throw something like this, where it lands directly on the corner, and thus blinding this player. So obviously if we throw this, you're not going to see it, completely blind, you have no idea that it was coming, and therefore as a player you can basically use this to your advantage and potentially go forward with that flashbang. So that's what a pop flash is, fairly simple. Everyone should understand exactly what that is. And next we have an entry flash. So this is something that doesn't get used enough, or people have entry flashes, but they don't define them. So what I would say is, just word of warning before we go over the definition. Every team should define their own entry flashes, and every team should say which ones are useful and which ones aren't as useful. So going into a definition, defined by a team as the flash used for going into sight. So for example, we use Inferno. There's lots of entry flashes that you can throw, but here's like quite a common one. So basically standing against this wall, you throw it and it's going to land in this location. So what this is going to do is, an entry flash is generally designed to flash off all of the sort of angles which would allow you to make an easy entry. So obviously coming here, if I was to flash there like that, I'm blind in this location. If I'm playing coffins, for example, I'm blind here as well. If I was playing, like, say, behind fountain, I'm blind. If I'm playing here, I'm blind. So an entry flash is generally a flash that's going to allow you to make an easier entry. But obviously, if you're using this while moving into the site, so for example, if I'm mid-entry and I'm already moving into the site, then it's obviously going to blind my teammates. So an entry flash is to get you into the entry, but not to be used while the entry is happening. So that's an entry flash. Again, fairly simple concept. Every team should define their own entry flashes, for pretty much every single site, or even map control. So for example, you could also get one for mid. On Inferno, you could also get one for top banana. Just something that you can say, throw the entry flash, and everyone on the team knows that's the entry flash that I need to throw now. And finally, we're going to have what I call a God Flash. So this is defined as usually the best all-rounder, and it's usually used, especially when we go into the sites, while you're in the mid-entry point. So for example, as we mentioned with the entry flash, if you were to try an entry with that flash, you're probably going to get blind. Obviously, it's designed to take all the angles. So a God Flash might look a little bit different. So it might be designed to affect the opponents, but not your own teammates. So for example, one that you commonly see on Inferno is one that might land, let's say, above the roof. That way, if there's any enemies playing in positions where they can hold angles like this, they're going to get blind. Potentially also, if they come out here fighting, same thing. They're going to be blind. And you can also potentially throw this a little bit further, so it bounces off this part just above here. And that's also then going to blind people that are also sat a little bit further back on CT. Let's say if you smoke this, you throw a God Flash, which lands a little bit above here. It's going to blind everyone on site. It's going to blind this player stood here spamming. And that way, you can define those types of flashes as God Flashes. And the benefit of them is, as I said, you can use them. We'll throw one again. You can usually use them with your teammates, so as you go into the sites, you can throw plenty of them, and your teammates never ever have to worry about them, turn around from them. And that's usually what I would define as a God Flash. So those are the 4 flashbangs types that, at least in my book, really do need vocabulary behind them, and especially the keyword side. As I said, feel free to call these whatever you want. They're fairly simple, but a lot of teams, they don't define what these things are, or maybe they don't talk over them, or they don't talk about which flashes are best for what scenario, etc., and then they don't put keywords on them. And this is just a really simple way of speeding up that process. So that's it for today. We'll go over some more keywords in the future. Thanks a lot.